Hi everyone, and welcome to the Expert Corner video series. I'm Amal Ridene, I'm from Tunisia, and I'm attending COP28 as a young climate change negotiator, negotiating on climate finance on behalf of my country. With me today is Mr. Stéphane Hallegatte, who is a senior climate advisor at the World Bank. Among other roles, Stéphane was team leader for the World Bank Group Climate Change Action Plan, and he currently leads the bank's work on the country climate and development reports, CCDRs, another acronym added to your lists, which I found very informative. This series of reports actually supports countries and helps them or guides them to prioritize the most impactful actions to reduce their GHG emissions, to boost adaptation and resilience, all while keeping an eye on other development goals. We are now in the World Bank, IMF, and Financial Times Pavilion in the Blue Zone at COP28. Welcome, Stéphane.
Hello, thank you.
Thank you. So, I've got a couple of questions to you. So, I'm linking your work in the CCGRs, and I've seen that you co-led a publication a few years ago, actually in 2012, that talks about that. Actually, it's called Inclusive Green Growth, the Pathway to Sustainable Development, and that advocates that there is still a room for growing cleaner without going slower. So linking it with the last wave of publication we have in the CCGRs and talking about green growth, that is still possible? Do we still a chance? Or are you mostly in favor of a degrowth? I know this is a huge question, but yeah. Over to you.
No, so I think there are many different questions here. There is one question which is about degrowth, and our position on this is very clear, that if you look at income level in many developing countries, you just don't have enough to provide people with basic decent life conditions. Access to electricity, access to sanitation, improved water, education, health, all of that we cannot do without economic growth. So it's very clear in those countries. There is a debate that can happen in high-income countries. Where we work, there is no debate. We need more growth to take people out of poverty, and the condition in which people live, this is not a nice to have. This is an imperative. There's a second question, which is whether we can do that growth without increasing emissions. And that, I believe more than ever, that we can do it. Actually, it's much easier now than it was 10 years ago. Now, if you're in the Sahel and you want to bring electricity to people, the cheapest way of doing it is solar panels, no emissions. If you want to increase agricultural productivity in those places, you have to take better care of the soil and use climate smart practices. Again, more income, more food security, more carbon in the soil, less in the air. Every time we're looking at concrete examples, we find that we can improve people's lives, increase incomes, and reduce emissions. It's not the case always, right? Steel, if you want to do steel today, you have to have emissions. We don't have the technologies. Hopefully, we'll have it later. But if you're talking about economic growth, yes, we can continue growing, especially in poor countries, without having to give up on our climate goals. We can combine both.
I guess that's positive news then.
Well, we need it, right? So it's not like we have a choice, because, again, if we try to grow without reducing emissions, impacts of climate change will keep increasing until it gets back at us, and so it's not sustainable. And if we try to reduce emissions, but we don't provide people with good quality of life and we don't take people out of poverty, this will also backfire. So it's not that we have a choice. We have to make growth and emission reductions go together.
So what do you think are the solutions and innovations that we can actually use today and that you personally are most excited about?
So what I look at, especially our report that we do at the country level. So in every country we ask the question, how can a country achieve its development goals? Can be poverty, can be access to energy, different across countries. How can they achieve those goals without increasing emissions and while building resilience to improve people's life? And we find so many opportunities, but they are not implemented. And so the question is, okay, why are those solutions not implemented? And sometimes it's finance, sometimes it's technology, but frankly, most of the time, it's the political economy. And so we have been writing more and more, understanding, okay, what's in the way, what blocks us, and what can we do to make the political economy better? And we have a lot of recommendations, including listening to people, understanding people's needs, understanding why people oppose these policies, and to adjust policies to build coalition and make them possible.
Awesome. Linking your answer about the political landscape with us being here in COP, I mean, in one word, in one sentence, what do you think about COP28? Do you think this actually favors the environment of the political landscape that you were just talking about? And what do you generally thinking about what's happening here?
Well, actually, I would be very interested in your views on this. I mean, I've been in many COPs.
I'm sure.
I've seen a lot of drama, and if I compare what I see here with where we were 10 years ago, it's an incredible progress, right? In terms of engagement, but also in terms of the solutions that we're discussing. It's much more concrete. 10 years ago, it was discussing about emissions. Now we're talking about renewables. We're talking about adaptation solutions. It's much more concrete, which is really where we want to go, from the abstract conversation about the big goals
Absolutely.
to what's going on the ground and what can we do to help. So I don't know if you have the same feeling, because I'm probably much older than you are, and so I've seen much more many COPs. But comparing 10, 15 years ago, frankly, things are moving. Not enough. We all agree they're not moving fast enough. But I don't think we should desperate and saying like nothing is happening, because things are happening. Just we need to keep pushing.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, 10 years ago, I was not as involved as you are, that's for sure. This is my third COP, actually. And yeah, it's a mix of hope, frustration sometimes, being happy with the small achievements that we're having. Sometimes my frustration comes from the fact that it's important to celebrate the quick wins or the small wins that we are having, but the fear of trying to kind of shift the focus, or celebrating finance for climate, but shifting the pockets for actual development that needs to be happening, exchanging or pointing fingers, the role of the public sector versus the role of the private sector. I'm a strong advocate in the role of private sector, of blended finance, of finding innovative ways of doing this, but I still think that we should make sure that this does not come at the expense of the others. So I've been told that a lot has happened in the last decade, and that's a great milestone. Different parties are becoming more and more aware of what's happening. I hope we manage to get to move this at a faster pace. I think a lot of things are at the stake now. This has been proven with science, technology, innovation is trying to back us up. So I'm hopeful, I would say, sometimes, or most of the time, especially being here, frustrated also. But I think, yeah, we still stand a chance. Not that we have a choice, like you said.
Well, I mean, I hope you're frustrated, because that's how things move, right? You cannot accept the pace, and we all know that much more needs to happen. But I really feel like we have to build on what has been done. So we did something a few months ago. It's just a case studies of 25 policies that countries have implemented to reduce emissions. And what's really striking is everybody remembers the unrests in Ecuador when they tried to reduce fossil fuel subsidies. Everybody remembers the Gilets jaunes in France with the carbon tax. But nobody sees the energy price reform in Egypt, the one in El Salvador, what's happening in Indonesia. So every time policies get implemented, they get results. Well, we don't talk about them, not very interesting. We only talk about the case where it doesn't work. And so there is, I think, this little bias that we don't see countries moving. And now in all sectors, in all types of policies, we find examples of things that are going in the right direction and that countries could replicate. And so one thing we really would like to do is make the success more visible, so that other leaders, ministers, and say, oh, my colleague in this country managed to do it, I can probably do it also. And they can talk, they can discuss, they can learn from each other, and we can replicate what works, which is really the way forward now.
Yeah, I'm sure, especially in comparable contexts, although each country and geography has its own characteristics and capabilities, but when it comes to global south countries, it's always relatable context. And I hope, yeah, probably bad news get more traction, and this is what gets us moving, but it is also important to celebrate the small steps that are getting us closer to the goal. We all recognize that we're not there yet, but yeah, I think it's important to also celebrate the policies and the commitments that are being implemented and that are happening on the ground. Thank you so much for sharing this.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. We really hope that you enjoyed the conversation. More Expert Corners video series will follow in the upcoming few days, so please stay tuned. Thank you.
Thank you.